Hello, how is everybody doing this afternoon? My name is Sutton Turner, COO of Vanderbloemen. I'm with Renee Cargile, and she is our Director of Finance at Vanderbloemen. And we're here to give you a little update on the PPP, and we'll call it PPP number two, because this is the second go around for PPP. Renee, how are you today?
I'm good. It's
You're
good. Beautiful
good?
day outside. The wind is blowing a little bit, but here in South Texas, it's, shorts and t-shirt weather outside
That's
right
right.
now.
And Renee's a big Oklahoma State fan. And so we're
Hmm.
recording this right before they play a football game this evening in their bowl game, which I'm predicting that they're going to win. And so Renee's in a really good mood right now. So
I may be in a better mood about 8 o'clock tonight. Maybe a
there you
better mood
go.
about 8 o'clock tonight. So
There you go. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to record this video to help as many of you all. But the information that we're going to cover is below. So if you want to just bypass the video, read the information, or if you're a learner like I am, which I'm a listener and a visual person, I do better with video. So we're going to give it to you both ways. But basically, the president of the United States has signed COVID relief, and it is $285 billion worth of funding to the original PPP. And that's a big point that I want to make. This isn't a brand new program. This is funding an old program that was established, if y'all remember back April, I think it was like the 3rd, 4th, something like that, of 2020. This is putting an additional $285 billion into that. And so that's one of the first big points is this isn't a new program. So we can take everything that we learned during PPP 1 and start from there. And then we're going to find the tweaks. And one thing that Renee and I were just talking about is that over the next, let's just call it 10 days, and we're recording this on Tuesday, the 29th, over the next 10 days, so early part of next year, we're going to get the guidelines from the Small Business Administration. Now, as we learned during PPP number 1, you read the law, which Renee and I have. We've read the law, and now we're going to turn and say, okay, SBA, how are you giving us guidelines? So sometimes when we read the law, it's a little bit different than what the SBA puts out as guidelines. And so as we learned in PPP number 1, we started communicating to you all what was in the law. However, the SBA later came out with clarifications, a couple of rounds of clarifications, and Renee and I learned a whole bunch onto that. So anything you want to add to that, Renee?
no, just so you know, I mean, we never know what they're going to come out with. What the law says is one thing, and what the SBA approves and what the Treasury interprets it is all three different things. So, but we have to go by what the SBA is stating because they're the ones that are funding the program. So we'll wait for those 10 business days, and it will be 10 business days, not 10 days for sure. And
Yep.
so we got to take into account that, most everyone's closed down on Friday on the 1st. So hopefully we'll get that by early next week and be able to get something else out to you guys.
Yep. That's good. So we got 12 points here and we're going to hit them all. The first one is that that's different than some of the things that we've learned. The first thing is the climate's really changed a little bit around the PPP, and churches, nonprofits, Christian organizations, etc., values-based businesses that we serve. Those different organizations taking the PPP, as we've seen through PPP number 1, all of those organizations were able to participate, would go through the process. And so what we do know today is that if you were a part of PPP number 1, you're going to be able to participate in PPP number 2. And also, and I just want to say this, and I added the link here to Williams Vanderbloemen, our CEO and founder. he put out a blog post last week talking about stop criticizing churches for taking government help in the pandemic. And so I think it's a good reference letter for you, but I really, as you work through this, but the climate's really changed. If we go back to April and May, when people were asking about the separation of church and state and some of those things, I don't really feel like we need to run through that again. I think we've conquered that. We've got clarification around that. And I think now we have these organizations that we serve, which are churches, nonprofits, Christian schools, values-based businesses, are feeling pretty comfortable about PPP and about the process. The second thing is that if you were eligible for PPP number one, you can apply for PPP number two. The big thing that they're calling out here is that if you have applied for PPP number one and you've got the loan, or you might even be waiting for the loan, the requirement, the way that it's written in the law is that you're going to agree to use PPP number one, all of it, and then use PPP number two. So one, that you're going to use it all or have used it all, PPP number two, that's one of the requirements. The other thing, and I've noted these couple of changes here from PPP number one. PPP number two says you can only have 300 employees. PPP number one was 500. The loan amount in PPP number two is reduced from $10 million down to $2 million. Okay. So that's the size of those organizations and that people can participate is reduced. And also the loan amount is reduced. And also there's a new forgiveness period. And actually for the covered period, the time to use these funds is anywhere between 8 weeks and 24 weeks. And what's interesting is they clearly communicating this time, as opposed to last time, that you can use the 8 weeks, you can use the 24 weeks, or you can use any time in between. So that's pretty clear this time around. So your thoughts on this, Renee, on one or two?
So my only thoughts are, if you took PPP number one and you're waiting on funds, or you're in the middle of your covered period, you can probably increase the amount of PPP loan that you're receiving due to some of extended expenses that they have passed in the second CARES Act. So we'll go through some of those extended expenses that maybe you want to include in your PPP number one loan, and you're able to do that. You're able to go back to your loan to your bank and ask them, hey, we've got these expenses also. But the key to everything is making sure you still have that 60-40 split. You have to spend 60% on payroll and benefits, and 40% can be spent on the other items. But you may be eligible to get more money on your PPP one with the expenditures that are included in CARES 2.
That's good.
CARES Act, PPP number two.
So Renee, why don't you hit number three, which is the 25%
Sure.
reduction?
So the only way that you are eligible for the PPP number two is if you met requirements of PPP number one, and if you have reduced your revenue, so money that's coming in, not including your PPP number one loan, but reduced revenue that's coming in quarter over quarter, comparing 19 to 20. So you're going to take earnings in quarter one of 2019, and you're going to compare that to quarter one earnings of 2020. And if there's a 25% reduction, then you're eligible for PPP number two. You can do that for quarter one, two, and three. If your business has just begun and you've just started, you can then use quarter number four in order to evaluate what if you had a reduction in quarter number four. So it looks like they're probably going to extend this where you can use any of the quarters. 1 through 4 is what I'm going to think. The law says one thing, but they're going to interpret it. If you can compare one of 4 quarters over 19 to 20, and you have a reduction of 25%, then you're eligible for PPP number two. But we'll see what they come out with.
Yep. And the biggest question that Renee and I have gotten so far over the last week is when you're calculating your 20%, let's just say quarter two of 2020 compared to quarter two of 2019, do you include PPP number one, that loan amount, those dollars, in your calculation of revenue. And what Renee and I are saying is no, you do not include the loan amount. So let's say that you got $100,000 somewhere in quarter two, okay, of 2020. You do not include that in your revenue number when you're comparing and doing this comparison to see if you qualify. And so that's the number one question that I've gotten so far. What do your any thoughts on that, Renee?
Same thing. The bill explicitly states 25% less gross receipts. Well, the PPP loan is not considered a receipt. It's considered other income. So to me, it clearly states that you're not going to use your PPP number one funds to compare that 25% for each quarter.
That's good. That's good. And one of the things that we don't, number 4 here, is we don't have a whole lot of clarity on, and that was one of the big calculations that we all had to do during PPP number 1, was the full-time employee equivalents, and comparing that. It doesn't have a whole lot of language in the law around that. I do think that we'll get clarity from the Small Business Administration on any type of calculation or any type of things like that. It does talk about, which is similar to PPP number 1, it does talk about you cannot reduce anyone's salary by 25% or their wages. And again, we have this question a lot. I reduce their hours by 25%. Doesn't matter hours. You can reduce somebody's hours. You just can't reduce their salary amount or their hourly wage. You can reduce their number of hours during that time period, but you can't reduce the amount that they're being paid per hour.
That is true. And keep in mind also, a lot of people, we go back to that full-time employee. A lot of employees have volunteered to reduce their hours so other people can have those hours within the church or your Christian organization. And so those are the exceptions to the rule that we had with the first PPP number 1 loan with FTE. That's, there's several exceptions when it comes to calculating that FTE, and that's one of them too. So keep that in mind as we go forward. We have no idea what forgiveness looks like on this PPP number 2. It's not stated in the document.
Nope.
Like Sutton had said, we know that you cannot reduce salaries less than 25% to be forgiven, but really does not state anything else. So I have a feeling it might go along the same lines of PPP number 1, but given that fact, we don't know even what we don't even know what the comparison period and what you're going to multiply your 2.5 against at this point. Yep. We don't know what period we're going to be able to use.
And everybody, we were all focused on the full-time employee equivalent until the whole easy form came out. Once the easy form came out, we could throw away having to do the full-time employee equivalent because if you were able to qualify for using the easy form. We don't know what that's going to be like on PPP number 2. We can assume, but that's all it is. It's an assumption at this point in time. Number 5 is, I want to be clear. It clearly says in the law that churches, nonprofits, Christian schools, along with most small businesses are included in PPP number 2. I will highlight that publicly traded companies are not included and cannot be included. There's also some language, and I don't think it covers anybody here, but you can't have any relations or do any business with China, and can't be a lobbying type of organization. So there are some requirements, but typically the people that we normally serve here at Vanderbloemen that are probably listening to this, which are churches, nonprofits, Christian schools, along with most what we call value-based businesses or small businesses, y'all all qualify. We have no issue with that. It's clearly stated in there. The next thing is that we go back on a calculation. Now I bet we get a lot more detail on this fact number 6, which is the loan amount is calculated very similar to what happened in PPP number 1, 2.5 times your payroll. So 2.5 times 1 month of payroll, or 2.5 months worth of payroll. That's the loan amount. Now, what we I don't feel very comfortable, and it's in the law, but it's not super well spelled out, is they're calling out that the period that you take is the average of your 2019 payroll. So you take your monthly average of 2019 payroll and you multiply that times 2.5 times, or 2.5 months worth of your average monthly payroll. And I just want us to tap the brakes there. I think we're going to get some clarity on that. There's just something in the back of my mind that says, I don't know if that's really the way it's going to work. And so we're going to find out in 10 days, we're going to know that clarity. Also, if you're listening and you're a restaurant, restaurants are able to get a bigger loan amount. Their multiple, instead of 2.5 times, is 3.5 times. So if you're a restaurant, you're going to get more, or you have an opportunity to get a larger loan based on your salary. Any follow up on that, Renee?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think just like we did last time, I think the clarity will be there that it could be a 12-month rolling calendar. It could be a previous 2019 calendar. And a lot of times what we found in the last PPP number one was it was what the banks wanted to see. It wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily what, we said, the SBA said, or the law said, is what the bank wanted to see. So we're going to wait and see in 10 days what what the SBA guidance says.
And if you're a Christian school, which is typically seasonal, so you have a seasonal time period in your pay, if that's the way that you pay and you don't pay on an annual basis, then there are some guidelines for seasonal types. Also, we serve a lot of Christian camps, so those would be seasonal as well. So there are some guidelines on seasonality, and we'll get clarity. That's some of the finer details that we're going to get clarity in about 10 days. Number 7, this is kind of cool because they clearly come out of the gate with something that was not clear in PPP number 1. The split on how you can use the loan. So you do 2.5 times your payroll, you get a loan amount. How can you use that loan? You need to use that loan. 60% of it must go to payroll and benefits, and then the rest of the 40%, it's actually opens up a little bit than PPP number 1. There's some additional, and I've listed them here. There's some additional operating expenditures, damaged. So some areas of the country have had some damage with riots and whatnot. And those types of things have had some damage, and also some supplier costs are included. So different than PPP number 1, PPP number 2, you have a little bit more. There's some more opportunity to be able to spend the additional 40%. Still, 60%'s got to spend on payroll costs and benefits, and 40% on these other expenses that we've listed out here.
I think the other thing is that maybe, and I've got to think back to PPP number 1, but when we were talking about benefits previously, we were talking more about health benefits that the employer paid for the employee was included in your payroll calculation. But now I saw that if the employer pays dental or vision or life insurance, that also is included now as part of but it's got to be what the employer pays. So that can also be included as part of the PPP number 2 loan in your cost, included in your cost. So that's interesting that has changed. So.
And also, let's go to number 8, covered period. Okay, so this is the time period that you're able to spend these dollars. 60% for payroll and benefits costs, 40% for these other expenditures. It starts at loan origination time, so the time that you get your loan, very similar to what it was back in PPP number 1. However, in this time, we have an 8 and 24 week period times, 2 times that you can spend it. But in this case, you can spend it anywhere between 8 weeks and 24 weeks. So 9 weeks, 10 weeks, 11 weeks, 12 weeks. You can stop it at any point in time once you've used all of those funds. So I think that this is a little bit cleaner and clearer compared to PPP number 1 when we came out of the gate with PPP number 1.
Yeah, and the other thing that they've changed in that covered period is now the extension from December 31st, 2020. Now we're moving that PPP number 1 extension to March 31st, 2021.
Yeah. If you are, and there's a lot of folks that are probably listening that qualify for this. If your loan amount is going to be under $150,000, and I know a lot of people I talked to during PPP number one, it was under $150,000. There is going to be an easier application. It's going to be a one pager, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to be able to apply. They haven't, obviously, the SBA hasn't come out with that, but there is some specific guidance that's in the law that says that if your loan amount is under the 150 grand, how it's going to be easier for you. So I just wanted to put this in here, because if that's you, no, it's going to be easier. It appears than PPP number one if your loan amount is going to be under $150,000. So that's 2.5 times your average monthly payroll for 2019. And so that would be your loan amount. Anything on that?
Yeah, I also think it's going to be tied to forgiveness. I think the one sheet that they're going to get there is actually you're going to certify that you're using the funds appropriately according to the PPP guideline, and that you have X amount of employees now, and you don't plan on getting rid of any employees or reducing any salaries. I think that they're going to probably tie that one shot application process together with forgiveness for under 150,000. Makes it a lot simpler for the SBA and the originating loan office. So I think that's going to be something we see.
Number 10. So we got 3 more to go. Number 10, prior to this COVID relief bill, PPP, when we're calling PPP number 2, the expenditures. So during PPP number 1, if you were a small business, okay, and you paid taxes on the business, during PPP number 1, if you took those loan dollars and you spent money with them, right? Okay. You use those monies during PPP number 1, you could not take a deduction on those expenses. Okay. So basically you were taking somewhat of a pretty decent sized tax hit if you were paying. Now, obviously this doesn't affect nonprofits, and it doesn't affect churches that have 501c3s. But if you're a small business and you're listening to this, it does affect you. And what that is during PPP number 2, they've gone back and said, hey, during PPP number 1 and during PPP number 2, the expenses that you're taking these loan dollars and that you're using, they are now tax deductible. So if you're an owner and a business owner, this is a big, big change that's going to affect you not only for PPP number 2, but for PPP number 1.
That is correct. I'm really excited to see them change that legislation in this bill.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Let's see. If you're a small business owner, there's a provision in here that's trying to help out restaurants. They know that restaurants have been really, really hit. So there's 100% deduction on your business meals that take place at a restaurant during 2021 and 2022. You just need to make sure that you itemize all of those. We don't have clarification on this, but I would look at that. If you're a small business owner, man, I'd start keeping your receipts as soon as January 1, 2021 happens on all your business meals. The last one, and this was one that I actually just stumbled on this morning. Okay. If you're a nonprofit, if you're a Christian school, if you're a church, donations that you're going to receive in 2020, this year that I'm recording this, there's a $600 deductible for people applying jointly, and a $300 deductible for individuals. That is a charitable contribution that you're going to be able to use as a deduction. During PPP number 2, what they are doing is they're extending that charitable contribution into 2021. So people are going to be able to give to your Christian school or to your ministry or to if it's a 501c3, and they can take donations to your church, and they're going to get a charitable contribution amount, be able to deduct that from their taxes in 21 now. So this is an additional benefit. It's something that you need to be communicating to your donors, that that's an additional benefit that's going to carry forward from 2020 into 2021. Any thought, Renee?
No, I think that it's great. I think we'll get some extenuating clarification from not only the SBA, but also the Treasury, because I know that's what they're waiting on too, is to see how the Treasury interprets this as well. So we'll get
Totally.
some more information out to you guys as soon as we have it.
Any other thoughts, Renee?
No,
Okay.
it's good.
So I think that just for everybody's sake, we probably won't put anything else out until we get some clarity from the SBA coming up in less than 10 days, somewhere in 10 days, somewhere like that. Also, you should probably expect Renee is going to do another spreadsheet to help you on your calculation. We'll put that up. So you're going to go to two resources, the same resources you went to before, churchcovid19.com, schoolcovid19.com. We'll produce everything there. I've got links to our slides, and I'm going to keep those up to date just like we did before on PPP number 1. We're going to walk through this. I'm sure we'll do a Facebook Live after we get the guidance from the SBA. I'll have to convince Renee because she hates to do them, but she's so good. So she still has to do them. So anyway, we hope everybody has a safe and happy new year. Please be safe. And we're praying along with so many people that 2021 is a year of great promise, hope for all of us, not only for you individually, but the people that you serve. So thank you very much. Hope you have happy New Year.